Welcome to Inside the Arena, your source for everything off the ice, off the court, and outside the field of play. With your hosts, KOMO Sports Director Niko Tamurian and KOMO Senior Reporter Chris Daniels.
Easily amused, so I quite enjoyed that. Chris.
Episode 5.
Wow.
They're going nuts over episode 5 here of Inside the Arena.
I like it.
It's good to see you.
It's good to see you, Chris.
It's been an interesting week.
Chris, I don't know if people know this. You're running around 1,000,000 miles a minute. I'm doing my thing with sports. Sometimes this podcast is the only time I get to sit down and talk to you.
Yeah.
It's the highlight of the week.
We catch up on other stuff behind the scenes too.
Well, sometimes.
Because we're all about what happens behind the scenes.
Well, that's the thing. We have to have our strategy, information meetings, and yeah, and to your point, a lot's going on right now. There's never quite an off season when it comes to that inside information in Seattle sports.
Well, and that's what we're all about here at Inside the Arena is what's going on behind the scenes, off the court, off the field, off the ice. You heard David Lee say that off the top. And we are back again to talk about all things NIL, TV digital rights deals, what's going on with new contracts that teams are signing, and yes, the return of the Sonics. Every week we're going to be talking about the return of the Sonics.
My favorite part.
So should we get to it?
I think we should. And we had a fun last week. I enjoyed sitting courtside with you at the Champions of Change event.
Yeah, it's not often we get to say that, right?
No, courtside, Niko and Chris, and we were able to see some folks. That was a really cool event. And deeper later in the show, we're going to look at Champions of Change, the three Seahawks legends that founded it. But we're talking with two of them, and Doug Baldwin and Avril, and one of my personal favorites. I have a T-shirt with his face on. I was able to catch up with Detlef Schrempf, which was a great conversation.
Yeah, and we're going to talk a lot about the NBA this week and some of the things that happened behind the scenes that were really kind of laying the groundwork for what could happen here in the next few months. Doug Baldwin, Avril, we're going to talk about what they're doing off the court.
It's amazing stuff.
And away from the field. But first, let's touch all the bases. Let's bring the crowd back in for Four Corners, what's good and bad in the world that we call local sports. Niko. They're going nuts for you.
Well, that's a first. That's for darn sure on that. I love what the Kraken's doing. In a town that sometimes, right, wrong, or indifferent, can lament the lack of spending from the pro sports teams. The Kraken went out and said, we hear you. We know that you want more pieces. We know that you want more stars after missing the playoffs in 2024, after that nice run to the conference semifinals in 23. So what do they go out and do? They go out and get a center in Chandler Stevenson from Las Vegas, a guy that I think protects Matty Beniers. I think that you win a Stanley Cup a couple years ago. You also bring that experience into the locker room. Then they bring a guy who won a Stanley Cup just last week, Brandon Montour from the Florida Panthers. It's just, these are win now moves. That's what they scream to me. And I love that. And I think fans should love that because, again, there's a notion sometimes like, oh, this team isn't spending. They're not making the right moves. And to that point, I don't want to hear a thing about complaining about a 7-year deal. You know this. This is what you have to do nowadays. You want to get the big names. You have to give them security. You have to make them want to come to Seattle. It's still relatively new in that regard. So I don't want to hear any complaints about it. If it goes wrong, they'll figure it out in 4 years, okay? They made the move. They had to make. They are instantly better for it. The Dan Bilesma era is off and running, and this is something I think fans should rally behind because what's the alternative? Not making the move? I love it.
To piggyback off your base here on Four Corners, it does seem like a business move that it has been made here, that the pressure is on Ron Francis, on the front office. They saw what happened with season ticket sales coming out of year 3 when a lot of people were re-upping. We've talked about it on the show before that that was likely a reason why they made the coaching move. That is likely why they did something here that Ron Francis has not done before, which is hand out these long-term 7-year deals, even dating back to Carolina. I will tell you, though, Niko, I don't want to get too negative too quick here on Four Corners.
That's fine with me.
But I was reading some of the reviews here on the signing of Chandler Stevenson.
Mm-hmm.
I hate to get into, hey, this is what somebody does on the field or on the ice, but this is a move that is already getting panned nationally from NHL writers just to fill everybody in who doesn't follow this as closely as you and I do. The Athletic has called that signing a pricey gamble with a ton of risk. And I also saw from Bleacher Report there are some contracts that you know are going to be a problem before the ink dries, and this is one of them. But to your point, it did feel like coming into season 4, the Kraken needed to spend some money, and they did.
I want to see, maybe one game before I deadpan a contract. And I know that's those guys' jobs, and we know them, and they're good people, and that's not what I'm trying to say. But in my opinion, let alone one game, let me see half a season before you start telling me a contract isn't good. I'm on our wavelength here where I like, yeah, it's a risk, but you got to make risks to win championships, quite frankly.
Yeah, and you got to put the puck in the net to win games
I
too.
think so.
That's what a wise man once said. Hey, I'm going to go in the positive base here, the positive corner of Four Corners, with David Bonderman, the UW grad who's scheduled to cash in his Celtic chips. Now, if you don't know what I'm talking about, the NBA champion Boston Celtic ownership group that he is a part of just announced that the team is for sale, although it is unknown just how big of a stake that Bonderman has in that franchise. He is a minority investor. It has been widely believed that he is going to need to sell that minority investment to, say, I don't know, buy a team in Seattle or be a part of a ownership group in Seattle. And his daughter and Kraken owner Samantha Holloway both expected to be a part of that endeavor here in Seattle. So you can't have stakes in two teams. You know this in the NBA. You can't have a piece of Boston and a piece of Seattle, so even as a family. So you would expect that this is something that gets resolved pretty quickly, as it seems like the ball is starting to pick up some momentum here in Seattle on the return of the Sonics.
Yeah, good news from here in Seattle, as you look at it that way.
So what's negative? What do you think's negative?
I don't like that it's officially official that the Pac-12 is done. And I know this is something we've known forever, but did you see the dramatic going off the air of the network?
Yeah.
They had some like poppy song about a story, and then like the Pac-12 logo just kind of like slowly faded into oblivion. And as I saw that, I'm like, nice touch, for your last seconds on the air. But it just reminded me of what that network was supposed to be. Sure, it was a great idea, owned and operated by the conference. It had all the potential in the world, but it's a cautionary tale to even the best ideas in the world can be just literally ripped to shreds by bad ownership, or not ownership, leadership. And
there was a lot of bad leadership.
And there was a lot of bad leadership there. You can put a lot of the blame on Larry Scott, and rightfully so, right? But then we talked about this on this show. A lot of presidents made misinformed decisions. The one professor study that said, the Pac-12 media rights should get $50 million. No. But they said no to a deal on that. Then the Big 12 jumped them, and the rest is history. And so seeing that, the last moments of that network that we all watched so much, seeing its last seconds on the air just made me upset. That's my negative of the corner, is this. It shouldn't have had to come to that. I mean, we're here now. There's nothing you can do about it now, but it just makes me so upset that it was poor leadership that made that happen, that made that finality moment occur.
Well, let me bring it home on the negative side, so to speak. And let's talk about the Mariners. For the second,
I do love the Mariners.
The second week in a row. I mean, they had a 10-game lead. I tweeted about it or X'd about it, and to the
we're
Astros.
Talking about you here. You're the problem.
It's all my fault. They had the 10-game lead to the Astros, and this is on the verge of becoming an epic summer for all of the wrong reasons. As we record this, the lead is down to 3. At a time too, financially, when there's a lot of uncertainty around the Mariners with Root Sports, the changes there. So I think people need to keep in mind when you have that discussion about, the Mariners need to do this, they need to get rid of this person, they need to get rid of that person. There are implications in the front office when people stop showing up or they stop watching the product on air. That means advertising money goes down. There are a lot of people impacted by this, and a lot of people behind the scenes that are concerned as well about a 10-game lead going down to 3 games. And you and I have talked about this before, that we just saw the Kraken spend a bunch of money because they felt the pressure from the fan base. You've got to believe that John Stanton and the rest of the upper management at the Mariners right now are feeling that same pressure. This is an inflection point right now.
Yeah.
For the Kraken and the Mariners. But let's talk about the team that's not here yet. And that's the SuperSonics, our Supersonic Minute that we're doing every week here on Inside the Arena. And everybody loves it. I mean, the crowd goes wild when we talk about the SuperSonics. I mentioned the Bonderman stuff that normally might get ignored, the David Bonderman news, but I pay attention to that boardroom stuff.
As you should.
And it does raise eyebrows. odd timing too, when the Celtics just win the NBA title and the TV digital rights deal is in the final stages, and the NBA is going to see a big paycheck there, and they're on the verge of expanding. But it does sound like the Grousebecks, who have been the majority owner family there, but the public face, feel like the time is right. But when you look at this from the 10,000 foot level and how all of these pieces fit together, there is that. And then Bruce Harrell, the mayor of Seattle, who I sat down with last week, he talked about where things stand, and he also put out a timeline on when potentially we'll talk more about expansion here in Seattle. Here's what he said. It seems like in the home stretch. We're waiting on a TV digital rights deal. Anything you can say as the mayor of Seattle about how close you think this city is to being part of an expansion process and bring the Sonics back?
Every week, I'm having some kind of meeting or discussion on bringing back the Sonics. You're going to see this summer, for example, a lot of Sonic buzz, which we need to signal to the NBA that we want a team. We know this is a good market. We know we have a good fan base. But now, as mayor, I've been asked by a lot of people to get the buzz rolling. The media deal hopefully will be closed here in a matter of weeks, a couple of months. Adam Silver's talked a little about the process that it will entail. It's much like how we competed for the FIFA games. So I am actively not only creating the buzz, but looking at how we build the infrastructure here in Seattle to signal to the NBA, you have to be here. You're missing this great market, and I feel very good about what's going to happen here in the near future.
So there you go. First week of July, when we're recording this, he's making it sound like there's going to be things to talk about this summer. And then you have the Celtics news on top of that. It certainly, by all indications, from the NBA, from the mayor's office in Seattle, from the trades, it certainly sounds like there's going to be some activity on expansion within the next few weeks, if not couple of months.
Exciting on any level, because as we record this week was the 16th anniversary of losing that team. I know you were on the ground floor of that, grilling the late David Stern when things didn't quite add up. And gosh, we could do a whole show on that, because I was watching that from afar.
Well, I could have said the the negative quarter this week could have been reserved for Greg Nichols, who was the one who settled that deal on July 2nd, 2008 with Clay Bennett for $45 million. That franchise is now worth $3 billion. Billion with a B, according to Forbes.
Yeah. Well, here's hoping somebody's got $3 billion for an expansion club. It sounds that way, but it is a chance to reflect. And I was able to reflect, as we mentioned, with Detlef Schrempf. And Detlef, as you know better than most, is just a real champion of all things Seattle, and certainly anything with the Sonics. So getting his perspective and getting all these former players' perspective as we get to this new point where there's always been hope, but now it's like you can see the light at the end of the tunnel, so to speak. And so it was great to talk with Detlef. We did that at the Champions of Change Celebrity All-Star Classic. Here's my conversation with Detlef, and it was really fun to talk with him. I want to ask you something. I know you see this everywhere, but I'm just struck, it's been 16 years since the Sonics left, and we see the gear everywhere. And obviously, it's a great logo and whatnot, but it just shows the support of basketball in Seattle. When you're out and about or in Seattle, what does it mean to see that logo? Because I'm sure you see it every time.
Yeah, I mean, we still have hope, right? It's been 16 years, and we've been told we're getting a team back for many years. But I think we're at this point right now where the NBA is making a decision this summer whether or not to have an expansion. Number one, let's have an expansion, and number two, let Seattle be one of those two teams that will get a franchise. And
that's what I wanted to ask you about next. Does it feel different? Because it feels like the commissioner has stuck to that timeline for a couple of years, collective bargaining, then media rights, and then looking at expansion, and he's done all of that. Does it maybe feel this? I mean, we've seen some attempts in recent years. Does this one maybe feel different to you?
Well, I think that at least we get to an end point where they make a decision. If they say no expansion, we basically will not have a team for a long, long time. Because that next TV contract is going to be 5 to 10 years, so they're not going to add a team in those years, and that will probably mean a lot of people will lose hope and not be basketball or Sonics fans anymore. So let's hope they come up with hey, we're going to expand to 32 teams, and let's go through the process.
And what do you hear from your guys, whether it's guys you played with or just guys from that are in the league right now, when they hear about Seattle? Because we always know there's expansion articles. Everybody's always talking about it. What's kind of the feedback you get when you hear people talking about the league coming back here, potentially anyway?
Well, everyone agrees that Seattle should have a team. I think everyone that played in the league, coaches, staff, they miss coming here. It's always a great place to visit. City's wonderful, and we had some great rivalries, that we could hopefully reignite.
I got to ask you this really quick, because I grew up in upstate New York, but I was the one guy that wasn't wearing a Knicks or Bulls jersey. I was in a Sonics green jersey. It was Sean's, it wasn't yours, but from those days, and obviously I know you played for several teams, had great memories, but that run you guys had in the mid to late 90s here, how special it was, how it really ignited something in the fans here. How special was that, and what are some of your favorite memories from that time period here in this city?
Oh, it's fun. The arena was packed. Key Arena was packed every night. Every game was loud, and we won a lot of games. We were a defensive team. We scrambled, switched, trapped, rotated. It was chaos, and I think everyone enjoyed that. So it was exciting times.
And if the team comes back, we'll see you on night one, right?
Oh, for sure.
Detlef Schrempf, we always love talking to you. Appreciate your time. Thank you. Yeah, I love talking to Detlef. We'll just, we'll remain on the positive side about expansion this time around. But, when he's talking about the arena being packed, and that's not something we have to imagine or remember about how it was in the 90s. Just look no further than when Caitlin Clark was here just last week. Sold out, 18,000 plus. The crowd was rocking. And I want to put it from the perspective that Caitlin's been all over the country.
Yeah.
And it was just packed arenas both in the NCAA tournament and now in the WNBA. But Seattle stands out to her. I asked her about the impact of that. I want to listen to that really quick from pregame the other night.
Every time I come to Seattle, obviously I've played in this building however many times I did in college when we had the regional here, and then obviously the one time when we came prior to the season, and it's been just great every single time. The fans are incredible, but that's obviously because of what Sue did and what Stewie did, and the teams that they had here prior. Like, people in this city support women's basketball and are so excited about it, and obviously the team that they have right now is really good, and Jewel's a tremendous player. So obviously they get excited when the Fever come to town, but also they have really good basketball here. They've had really good basketball. So for me, this is a city I love coming to and look forward to coming to. The fans just really support, and you can tell there's just a vibrant energy about them and about the game that we're going to play.
It's a nice endorsement.
And she was like 5 when the Sonics left.
Yeah.
Seattle.
Yeah.
So she's being honest when she talks about the crowd and just the atmosphere in Seattle. That's all a great endorsement coming from one of the most popular basketball stars in the country right now. And Detlef has always been a voice for Seattle, and it just thinking back to his playing days, that was a different type of NBA too. Yeah. About a lot really about the defense, and he was a rare tall guy who could shoot the 3 ball. Him and Sam Perkins just lingering out at the 3-point line. That was unusual in those days. Now it seems like every tall person can do that.
Yes, absolutely. And what a pleasure to watch those. And certainly for Caitlin, her second visit to Seattle to be sold out. Imagine what's going to be like when the Sonics are here, and it's going to be the similar thing. We were talking all night about this Champions of Change.
Yep.
Doug Baldwin, Michael Bennett, Cliff Avril, they started it because when they were players at VMAC, the Seahawks headquarters in Renton, they noticed some kids in need. And it's turned from that into the Family First Community Center in Renton, other endeavors. I sat down with Cliff and Doug. I want to play that because they're doing some awesome things in our community.
That connection with the community, obviously, it's something you guys have forged over years and years and years. And to see it, to see Champions of Change more from the idea whenever you guys initially thought it up to what it is today, and undoubtedly what it's going to be in the years to come. Now, how special is that?
I mean, it's special. I think from an emotional standpoint, it's special because I get to do things with my brothers again, right? Being in that locker room, being in those trenches, it's just, there's a different connection that you form, a different bond that you form. And, when you retire and you're no longer in that locker room every day for 14 hours out of the day, it's a little bit different. But to be still connected to Cliff and still be connected to Mike and all the guys who are going to come in and celebrate this event with us, it's a special time. And, we we get back in the locker room at Climate Pledge, and it's like we're in the locker room at the Seahawks facility all over again, and it's a beautiful thing. I think it's quite honestly, I think it's a lot of healing for us, and also supporting a good cause at the same time. But I think that part for me is the most special part. I get to do something fun and competitive with my brothers all over again.
Yeah, to reiterate, I think, just talk about the locker room component of it. You don't realize how much of a role that and how much excitement and really emotions that come with just us going to a locker room and being back in that space. That's not just for the football player. That's Jamal Crawford. That's IT. Some of those guys that are kind of out of the league. Just getting that feel. There's some kind of camaraderie and an emotion that comes with that. Kind of just forget about it until you get back in that space, and it brings the competitive juices back out. And then you add the component of, okay, this is for the city too. This is for the city that's given us so much over the years as well. So being able to do that, being able to come together with my brothers, with different folks that have supported us through our years as Seahawks, and once we've retired, to be able to get with those individuals to put something like this together for the city, I think is pretty cool.
And here's the thing, and we see the kids in the hallway, we see what this building does specifically. I know this is one aspect of it, but the difference you've made in kids' lives with Champions of Change. I mean, I know it's so generic to say how special is it, but it really is. Like, just me from the outside, I'm like, wow, this is really special. For you guys in it, making this happen for those kids, how special is that?
I think the kids are everything, right? They're our future, right? And we believe, and our synergy is, we believe in serving and giving back to the future, or to the next generation. I only think about, hey, man, what if I was able to get some of the different things that we're hopefully being able to provide and give to these kids? When I was younger, how much further could I have been? The experience, the exposure, all these different things. So being able to serve the kids, being able to give back to the future, I think is everything. And it's very fulfilling to just see some of these kids as they grow up and seeing the men, the women that they become, and playing a little small role in some of the success they have as well. I think is pretty cool.
Yeah, I think he I don't want to say it was a mistake, but he said giving back to the future. I don't know if you actually meant that, but I actually, I'm going to take that, and I think that's exactly what we're doing.
I said what I said.
Giving back to the future. Legitimately, the impact that I think that we're trying to have and that we're pushing for, this is impact that's going to be generational. And so a lot of times I think organizations, they want measurements or KPIs right now in this immediate term, but truth of the matter is the work that we're trying to accomplish is generational impact. And so we may not see those measurements or those KPIs in our generation, our lifetime. And we're okay with that. We know the impact that facilities like this, clinics like Odessa Brown, organizations like Dignity for Divas, we know the impact that they've had on our lives and folks around us, our families' lives, and that's generational. And so we're okay with making that generational impact. That's what we set out to do in the first place.
And I guess the next question on my mind here is that all the years you spent here in Seattle and the support you got from those fans, but it also gives you this opportunity, right? This platform you have to, from all the years you spent here and all the work you did with that team to be able to make things like this happen. And how unique, how rewarding is that part of it?
I think it's very rewarding. But again, I think it also speaks volumes to the support that we get in the city too, right? Like I said, so many people have supported us while we were on the football field, but once we got out of football, that's another reason why I would say we stayed in this area, because neither one of us are from here. I would have never thought in a million years that I would have made this home, but it's the support, it's the community that gets behind us to be able to go in whatever direction we want to go, and we have people to support us to make those things happen. So I think that's why being here, being in Seattle, we have that community, we have that support to help us continue to make change. We have that platform, and a lot of people understand that, and they feel like they can kind of accelerate it for us as well. So we want to just continue to keep growing with the community and continue to keep pouring into the community, again, that has given us so much.
Yeah, and I think the part that resonates with me the most is just the culture that we built through the Seahawks and in the community, winning a Super Bowl, going to another one. There's a culture in the community around that, and we helped establish that. And then when you're out in the community and you're trying to serve the community in these ways, and you feel that culture, and then they understand and can represent that in a way that's congruent with how we showed up on the football field, like that's special, right? And it's hard to replicate that. And I think that's what I would like to think drives us personally, collectively, to do this work with Champions of Change, is that we're continuing building that culture and building that environment. And I do think, and I may be naive to this, but I think there's a potential for us to continue to build that culture and do something special in this region. And not, I say this region because it's not just the city of Seattle, right? It's Renton, it's Bellevue, it's Kirkland, it's Tukwila, it's all of these areas, and building this culture and really seeing each other for human beings. And making something special out of that and continuing to build that culture.
The great Doug Baldwin, Cliff Avril. How cool is that what they're doing in the community?
Doug Baldwin, the future governor of Washington.
Got my vote.
Well, he at first said he wasn't going to run for office, and now he's kind of wavering on that. And this is one of the things that's laying the groundwork for that, potentially down the road.
Potentially. Yeah, I think that I love the story that he tells me, he noticed he went to pick up teriyaki after practice one day in Renton. And he just noticed these kids hanging around the plaza, and he's like, well, don't you guys have anywhere to go? And they're like, no. And that one interaction was the impetus for him to get the spark to start the Family First Community Center in Renton. If you haven't seen a beautiful facility, of course, it's got a basketball court because Doug loves basketball. And I'm in awe of it when I'm there, and I appreciate their time, and really cool what they're doing in the community.
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
For this. The final buzzer.
Who? It's putting me on the spot right there. Has there ever been more proof that Seattle is a basketball city, Chris?
No, there's been like 16 years of proof, Niko.
Like, come on. And I was just struck by that at the Storm game last week. And it's not just the Caitlin Clark effect. I posted a photo on my social media, and I just loved it. I'm in Section 20 at Climate Pledge Arena. I'm just looking. It's a sea of fans. They're engaged. They're excited. Hey, newsflash, they were rooting for the Storm, who was winning by double digits at that point. It had nothing to do with Caitlin Clark. Yes, more fans were there. I'm not going to deny that there's an impact.
Yeah.
But Seattle's a basketball city. You know that. I know that. And I shouldn't say I hope, because I know the people that matter in certain league offices know this already. But it's just like, it's screaming out there. It's screaming out there. We're ready. We've been ready.
Since July 2nd, 2008. Did I already say that in this show? The day the city of Seattle settled with Clay Bennett in the basketball group that then started in Oklahoma City. Yeah, hey, I will never forget that day. We could do a whole show on this. I
think we should.
And maybe we will later this summer. But boy, a lot of villains that day, from Greg Nichols, Howard Schultz, David Stern. What's going to be very interesting about this story is how Clay Bennett actually will factor in to the return of the Sonics.
He has to vote, right?
He has a vote, and it wouldn't surprise me if he's on the expansion committee. So I think it'll be interesting. It'll be an interesting chapter in this story, how the villains can all of a sudden become heroes.
I was going to say, he has to atone for that. Come on.
Yes. How about that for a tease? How about that for a way to end this show?
Take us out, David.
You've been listening to Inside the Arena with Niko and Chris. Please subscribe on your favorite platform. Until next time.